Welcome to the show. My name is Karen Holton. I am an ET experiencer and ambassador, an ascension coach, a direct channel, a shamanic guide, and I'm the host of Aliens and Astrology. Be sure to check out more of my unique content on my website, www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com, and my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels, Karen Holton TV. I can also be found on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, www.forbiddenknowledge.news. My paranormal experiences have taught me to replace my beliefs with working theories, which evolve over time. My co-host is Dave Petrella, and although we hold two different viewpoints, we both see things from the same broad perspective, and we are both passionate about the ascension process.
Hi, I'm Dave Petrella. I'm an astrologer, biologist, spiritual guide, and Oak Island theorist. You can find me on Facebook and YouTube at Dave Petrella, and on Instagram at Dave Petrella12. Please feel free to send me an email through my YouTube page. I'm happy to join Karen in our search for truth. We can find the answers we're looking for about health, science, extraterrestrial intelligence, and many other related topics. We're glad to have you join us today for the show.
Welcome back to Aliens and Astrology. We've got a really interesting guest today, and Dave is going to introduce her before we get into the program. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Thanks, Carmen, for being here. Today, guys, we have a really wonderful guest, my friend Carmen Turner-Schott. We actually met on another one of my friend's podcasts, Laura Lee Potvin, Angel Rock with Laura Lee Potvin, which is on Mondays, UPRN Radio. She's got a Facebook page, YouTube page. And Carmen is an astrologer. I'll go through her bio in a second here. She also does actually many other things too, which is really excellent. But we haven't had an astrologer on the show yet, apart from myself. And so I listen to lots of people, and I like to get a feel for where people stand and their skill set and all this stuff. And I really thought Carmen was spot on with what she was doing. I watched, all the show, I think several times actually, just to kind of get all the details in. And so I wanted to invite her because I think we could have a really good conversation about it. And then in the meantime, me and Carmen have been talking for a bit, and we were also talking about historical biblical texts and things, some of the different books of the Bible, some of the contention that's come up with some of that topic, because it's especially you get into some of these texts that are the older texts coming in, Dead Sea Scrolls, and when that all happened. I read a book on that a couple of years ago, actually. Anytime a bureaucracy gets their hands on ancient texts, what's going to happen with that. So there's lots of stuff that was, of course, not included in the Bible, and why. I mean, it's generally a power grab for people and wanting to control and manipulate information. But anyway, during our conversation, it came up that there are lots of indications, of course, of astrology being in the Bible. And specifically for me, it was astrotheology back in the beginning with, of course, Santos Bonacci, Karen, who you know his work very well. And so it was a perfect opportunity to talk about astrology in the Bible. So that's kind of what we're going to focus on today. And I'm just going to go ahead and read Carmen's bio, and we can kind of get going with the show. Okay, Carmen Turner-Schott, of course. Carmen, welcome again. Carmen is an author, licensed clinical social worker, psychological astrologer, teacher as well, with national and international clientele. She received her undergraduate degree in psychology from Fontbonne University in St. Louis, Missouri in 1997, She completed her Master of Social Work degree at Washington University in St. Louis also in 1999. She's a published author and has written 7 books. Her 2 newest books are called Sun Signs, Houses, and Healing, Build Resilience, and Transform Your Life Through Astrology and the Mysteries. Excuse me, that's the first book. The second book is called The Mysteries of the 12th Astrological House, Fallen Angels. And Carmen has been researching the 8th and 12th astrological houses and trauma, healing, and transformation for the past 25 years. Carmen began her astrological work at the age of 16 after an experience with a glowing ball of light. I'm actually really interested to hear about that too. I think Karen is as well. In her doorway, and began studying metaphysics and the Edgar Cayce material at that time. I actually just finished an Edgar Cayce book too, so that's something we could definitely go into as well. She has presented astrology workshops for the Association of Research and Enlightenment, which of course is Edgar Cayce's foundation, ARE for short, A.R.E for short, throughout the years, and teaches a variety of spiritual development classes. She founded Deep Soul Divers Astrology and is the admin of several Facebook astrology groups. Contact her through her website at carmenturnerschott.com. Like her Facebook pages at Deep Soul Divers Astrology and Carmen Turner-Schott Writer. Or follow her on Instagram at Carmen_Turner_Schott_author. And the links, I'll put the links, well, Karen, I'll put the links in the description, guys, so you don't have to memorize what I just said for the links there. You just be able to click on that. And welcome, Carmen, to the show. Really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I love astrology. I love religions. I love to talk about hidden mysteries and all of these things that we're interested in. So I know we connected on a lot of different things. So and had a really cool experience too. That one time we were talking with Saint Teresa, which you just can't make this stuff up. These meaningful coincidences, So I love Carl Jung and all his work as well with dreams and synchronicity and all that.
Definitely. Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, we had synchronicities come up with that, and it's a rare thought. We both agree, Carmen. It's a rare thing to find someone that's willing to go all the avenues, especially the ones that most people don't think can coexist. Which in this case is why I'm especially excited about this show, because I follow Christ's principles, in addition to some other principles from different religions, but I'm also an astrologer, and so it can. And I believe we have the same thing in common, if I'm not mistaken. And so they can work together.
Yes.
And we want people to see. We want people to see. Put it in the proper context, I think, is what it is, and just be relaxed about it, be open to it, and we can actually have both at the same time. It's totally possible. Okay.
Yes.
Did you did you have any slides or anything, Carmen, or you just want to start to go into the discussion?
Yeah, I don't have any slides. No.
Okay. So I'll leave it up to you wherever you want to open it up. I mean, if you have any notes or anything, but it's going to just flow. I know it.
Sure. Yeah, I'll kind of start, when I first got into astrology, what changed me was, I was raised in the Midwest in Missouri in a very, Baptist is kind of how I was raised. All my family was Baptist, but I've always was different. And ever since I was little, I just believed in angels, and I used to, look at the sky and wonder, what is out there? Are there other, people on other planets? And, all of these things. I always just kind of knew about these things and had an interest in them. And no one in my family could really explain it to me. And I always was a very avid dreamer. I dreamed very deeply. I was a sleepwalker. I would act out my dreams in the night. And I remember doing that. And I kind of grew out of it, I think, like in high school. But I would walk down, I'd be walking in the hall in a hotel, they'd find me, and I was sleeping. So I did all kinds of stuff that my mom and dad just didn't know what to do. And I'd wake them up afraid of the dark. And I always had to have a nightlight on. I was always very imaginative. And I remember, one night I was in high school. I went to bed. I came home. I always had my bed where I could face the doorway. and I had to be able to see out, and I had a little nightlight there, and our house is really small. So my brother's room was next to mine, and my parents' room was across the hall. So they could see into my doorway from their room. And my dad and brother were on a fishing trip. And my mom, and I were in the house. She was across the hall. And I woke up, went to bed normally, woke up middle of the night. And I looked to my doorway, and there was a glowing orb, a glowing ball of light about the size of a softball, a little bit bigger. And it was translucent, looked like water, yellow, white, floating there. And what happened was I got scared because, it was the unknown. And it was my first real experience with something like this. And I was frozen. So I had no voice. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I tried to scream, but there was no sound and I couldn't move. So I was just watching this thing. And the only thing I had control of was my mind. And I remember praying, please don't have it come in my room. Please don't have it come in my room. And it never did. And I laid there for what seemed hours and just watched this thing. And then it would leave. It would come right back in my door sill, but never came in my room. And it would go in the restroom, come back and float. And after hours of laying there, I finally tried to scream, Mom, and I got it out. It's like it released me, and I was able to scream for my mother. And I said, look in my doorway. Do you see it? And she said, yes. And she was, I go, what is it? She goes, I don't know. And my mother was kind of a skeptic. But my mother had some things happen to her as well that were unexplained that I didn't find out till later on. So she's very intuitive as well, but kind of, I think, blocked it, just for fear of the unknown. But she definitely would dream things. And like my grandmother as well, her mother had experiences like this too. But they never told me this, when I was in high school. I found out after this. But my mother said, just go back to sleep. Maybe someone's shining a flashlight in. Or maybe it's a lightning bug. I'm like, it's huge. It's not a lightning bug. It's something. She's like, just go back to sleep. I laid there and I wanted to get up, but like I said, I couldn't move. I couldn't get up. It's like I was paralyzed. And eventually I think I passed out from exhaustion watching this thing and was afraid to get up and everything, and woke up the next day. And my mother's like, that was no lightning bug. She goes, I don't know what that was. And I said, I think it was an angel or a spirit guide or whatever. Well, the interesting thing was, after that experience is when I started looking into astrology. And I was looking into the pyramids, aliens, ancient cultures. I started reading all these books about Egypt, all these different things I got interested in. And I ended up going to a little bookstore and got my first astrology book. And it was called Mystic Valley in St. Louis, Missouri. And I read about being a Virgo sun. And I started teaching myself astrology at that time, and it became my passion. And so I learned how to do charts. I used to do them by hand and everything. I look back, I don't know how I did that, but I have technology that does all that for me. But it was my passion. And I knew that it explained my personality, and it validated why I was the way I was, and even dreaming things that would happen. I remember telling a preacher once, I dreamed something and the exact thing happened the next day. And it was never like, that's a gift. I was never told that was a spiritual gift. I was always told to hide it. Like there's something wrong with, you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't be knowing things like that. And so I think it took me a while to get comfortable with my spiritual gifts, which I've always been, like we talked about, a Christian mystic is what I consider myself, Christian mystic. I also, love Buddhism and different religions. I love all of the religions really. And so, but I always have been a Christian mystic is what I would say, and a Christian astrologer. And this is what I would say. And I'd have people write me from all over the world once, they started reading my articles and my Facebook groups, like, how can you be a Christian and believe in astrology? And I'm like, well, astrology is throughout the Bible. And so, I started, reading the Bible. Of course, I always did. I was a minor in religion and philosophy in college. So I'm like, it's right here, in Genesis, Jesus talks about different things and we can hit on it. The 12 disciples, the 12 signs, all of this occult, they used to call it a cult. So knowledge, why is astrology considered a cult? And I wrote an article about that and published it online many years ago. And this lady from about.com said, hey, will you write some articles about Christianity and astrology? Because that's really cool. And we got a lot of people that are interested, that are Christians, that are interested in astrology, but they're afraid to talk about it. And so I did a little research on it, and I think it was like Catholics, a lot of Catholics, there was research, believed in astrology and believed in these different things, right? And so I kind of tied that into my article, and I wrote a series of articles based on my own experiences, being raised Christian, all of the different things that I went through, the three wise men, following the star and all of that. And I published a little ebook called Astrology from a Christian Perspective. It's just all the articles I wrote about this and put it out there. And every time I can open up someone's mind about how astrology is part of our ancient religions, it's not evil. And a lot of people, have a different perception of what an astrologer is, because maybe one verse in the Bible might say something, right? They go with that one verse. I'm like, yeah, but look at all the other books in the Bible that talk about astrology, and it's hidden within the Bible. There's more to this. And, and I always go by what Jesus talks about, when they asked him, how will we know when you'll return? There'll be signs in the sun, moon, and stars before I return. And he told him, and I just thought, why would he say that? That's Jesus. He's saying this, right? And then he said, follow the man with the alabaster jar in the house that he dwells. Well, that's Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius, the symbol. So he's talking in astrology symbolic language to his disciples. And I loved it. And I just became obsessed with that. And I was going to teach an e-group for the ARE, astrology in the Bible, and I was developing that. And then, they kind of got away from the e-groups. I did a lot of 8th and 12th house groups with them as well. But people with, 8th and 12th house planets tend to have these spiritual experiences and these heightened abilities. And this is kind of through my research. And most of them believe in angels. They've seen angels. They've had these experiences with orbs. I realize that I'm not unique. I am part of a lot of different connections and groups of people that share these similar experiences. And that was really nice to connect with others and see, okay, this is 12th house suns, people with the moon in the 8th, this is very common, and started really building that passion there. And, and I always try to open people's minds up, and I know when we talked, I wasn't raised Catholic, but I always was drawn to the Catholic religion. And I think that's from a past life, which I did a lot of research in that as well. Looking at the Catholic Church, like you were saying, there's so many books that were written that aren't included in the Bible. How can we just close our mind to that and think, well, just because, the Nicene Creed, a group of people decided what was going to be in the Bible. And then I started realizing the Catholic Church has a different Bible than I had when I was in the Baptist church. Why is that? Why are these books included? And I started researching, Catholicism and all these things. And I never really knew the saints and things like that. And I had this experience that I couldn't explain with St. Teresa the Little Flower, St. Teresa of Lisieux. And it started, before my daughter was even born. And I'm like, I didn't know who the saints were. I never learned about that because I wasn't raised Catholic, but I had a connection with her and still do. And I was telling Dave about it just a couple months ago. And I don't share it with a lot of people. And I just started writing him about my experience with St. Teresa. I wrote an article about it when my daughter's 18 now. Before she was born is where I connected all these things, because I almost became a nun. And I don't tell a lot of people this, and I wasn't even Catholic. I almost became a nun in college because of these dreams I was having and these experiences. I'm like, am I meant to be a nun or a religious monk or something? And I realized this was a past life where I had been a nun. I had been in a Catholic, and I know, and I had these memories and these dreams. And St. Teresa, when I saw her face on this brochure of the Carmelites, I was getting all these brochures. I knew her, and it got chills. I got tear-eyed. I'm like, I knew her face. How would I know someone's face? It was a black and white picture. And so I was telling him about all these things. And then that day we were talking, it was St. Teresa's birthday, and I had no idea. So it was chills. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Cause like, why am I talking about this today? And I was just writing,
Right.
Dave, and then I look, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's her birthday today. It was just it was January, and it was just not even planned. Like the whole thing was like a message. And I've had another, since talking to you about it, another coworker, a friend of mine, I was talking about St. Teresa to her, and she said, "You're not going to believe what came in my mail today." And she showed me, it was like the St. Teresa prayer had came in the mail, and this little medal. And she was, and it was just like all these connections, which I believe are not coincidental. They're meaningful synchronicities, that we're meant to talk to certain people at a certain time because we're learning things, right? And connecting with other people that believe in these things. But I did a lot of talking, so feel free to ask me anything or.
Yeah, fantastic. Karen, did you want to comment first?
Yeah, briefly, just Carmen, it amazes me at the synchronicities between your life and my life. I also had paranormal experiences at a very young age. Nobody believed me. I went to different churches. I learned a lot about the Bible, and I learned a lot, about being a good person and everything. But I was always told, this is evil, this is bad. You need to fill your mind with biblical scripture and dogma. And then finally, I no disrespect to anybody out there who's religious, but for me, in my situation, I had to wise up and start embracing these experiences. So I'm thrilled to bits that you're here and you're sharing, because I got a hunch there's millions of us, Carmen, millions, and we think we're all alone and we're not sure if we're crazy. And it's just so wonderful to have you. So I'm going to just leave it at that, let you guys continue, and just really excited by what you're saying. Thank you.
It's kind of like, we're forced to be practical, and we're in this material world, but we're spiritual beings, we're souls. And, I walk with a foot in both worlds. I've always felt like I'm not from here. And even when that's why I called the 12th house book Fallen Angels, because, and it's not a bad thing. It's like we're angels who fell to earth that aren't from this realm, and we're in this material world, and we're different. We have these experiences we can't explain. And most people that are around us are not awakened or not aware, because they've never had these experiences. And I've always said, if I see it, I'll believe it. This is something that was always, ever since I was young. And I remember saying that about UFOs and aliens and everything else. And I always had kind of a fear that when I was young, and I never knew where it came from, of being abducted. And where would that come from? I grew up in the middle of the Midwest, Missouri, right? And never really knew where that came from. And so when I got into astrology, I started reading about those things as well. I read the book by Whitley Strieber, Communion. I read all these books, Fire in the Sky, the movie, and, just really researched the pyramids of Egypt, and, all these different cultures. And I always was open-minded to those things, and wondered, and I'm not an expert by any means, but I will say that in 1995, it was 2 years after I saw the orb. Let me rewind. I actually saw orbs a second time, and that actually 3 times. So in my life, I've seen orbs 3 times. The first time was when I was 16. Then the next time was the day I got baptized, and I was 19. And I did not want to go to church that day because it was a Baptist church, and my dad was getting baptized that day. I had no plan of getting baptized that day. And I was mad. My mother made me go. Actually, I was playing basketball. I had no desire to go, but she made me go. So I was in my basketball gear sitting in the church, right? And I just, to support my family. And I'm looking up at the preacher, and behind him, I saw these 3 orbs go across behind him, distinct 3. And then I felt this energy come through me. I can't explain it. And I knew I had to go up. And I stood up and walked to in the front of the church in front of everyone. This is not something I do. I'm shy. And I'm like, I'm meant to get baptized today. And the preacher's like, what? You know, he's like, what are you? He's like, okay. I said, I meant to do this today. He's okay, go stand on the wall. So I go stand with everyone else that had been already met with, screened. They were meant to be baptized that day. They had to go through all these meetings, right? I just went and got on, and I was in the room, and I felt the presence of someone. I can't explain. And I said, I know I'm meant to do this today. I don't know why. And I'm like talking, I felt like someone was with me, and I did. And then the other time was I was playing in a very big basketball game. It was my senior year, and we was on TV, there were police there, the place was packed. It was my last game, my senior year. And I got fouled, and I had to shoot 3 throws, which if I made them, we'd win. If I missed them, we'd lose, right? Because there's like 20 seconds on the clock. And as I stood there and looked at the rim, it was packed, and I saw this orb going up across the rim. Now, I never told anyone this till like my mother knew, because she said I was acting strange and something was weird that night. My mother said I looked over and waved at the bench. I don't remember anything except I felt like I wasn't in my body. I remember I couldn't feel my legs when I shot, but I made them, and we won. And it was one of the best days of my life. I was interviewed on TV, everything. So it was just really weird though that I saw the orb. And so I went to a workshop years ago at the ARE called Aliens and Orbs and Energy or something. And they had done a lot of research about orbs. So I was wanting to learn more about what are the orbs, other people's stories that have seen orbs. So I've personally experienced that. And that's why I believe it. And I'm open-minded, like, because of what I've experienced. And if people see me normally in life and they don't talk to me and know me, if I don't trust people or know them, I'm not like sharing everything. But I'm out there now because of these radio shows, so I'm sharing more about my mystical experiences. But I don't judge people. I actually believe that there's a spirit, we're spiritual beings in a material world. There's a spiritual world right here, like a veil. And we have to realize that. And I think people are getting more interested in these things. And I always said, if I see it, I'll believe it. And in 1995, I was with my friend, and we were driving on I-44. If you've ever been through Missouri, down to Branson, Springfield, down through Rolla, my hometown. And I looked, it was a clear sky, full moon, stars out, everything. And I'm driving, we had the music on, she's talking to me, and I look in my rearview mirror and I see this, I don't even know how to explain it. It was like the sky opened up yellow, and it was a saucer shaped yellow light that covered the entire sky. And it was just across the whole highway, across everywhere, hanging there and I'm like, what is that? So I pull off, I get out of the car, these other cars had pulled off, and she got upset. She was a little bit afraid. And I looked at it and I watched it, and like within a matter of seconds, it's like it just shrunk and disappeared. Boom, gone. It didn't have blinking lights. It wasn't, I couldn't see a color. It was like the sky opened up yellow, glowing saucer in the sky. That's the only reason and the way I know to describe it. And that changed me too, because after that, I believe there's more to space and other dimensions and other worlds because of that. And then, I got into some conspiracy theories, research and all kinds of stuff. And so I have that part that's in me that I don't go full on with, but I've always dabbled and been very open-minded about all of those things. And then, recently with all of the things in the sky that we're shooting out of the sky, I was writing Dave, like, what is this? Are they going to finally tell us the truth? So, it's interesting what's happening in our world right now. And I think some of it might be, as Pluto is going to be going into Aquarius. I think more awakening, more, people seeing these things in the sky, the air, space travel, technology, all these things are happening. It's going to be a big change in the world, and I think that's astrologically, we can kind of look and see what's going on astrologically and why we see these things on the news. But it's very interesting. I know I saw something I can't explain. And that was in 1995, before we even had cell phones, or any of this, like talking to you now and I can see you. This is crazy, right? So we didn't have any of this back then, and I was raised, in the 80s, it was like, I played in the creek and had tree houses, and, that's what I did. And so it's interesting. And, I'm always trying to, open people's minds to things and just say things, make them think about it. I was talking to Dave about, I lived in Germany twice, and so probably a total of 6-7 years. And I traveled a lot through Europe and went into a lot of churches, and I love churches. So I go into all these different churches, and in so many churches, there were astrological symbols in the floor, in the ceiling, in the images. And even here in St. Louis, Missouri, we have the St. Louis Cathedral. And there's a beautiful, the book of Revelation, there's Jesus, there's the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac right there in the church around Jesus. And it's just amazing to me. I've seen it all over the world, and how can we be told that astrology is evil when Jesus talks about it? And so that's kind of my passion. I've had hate mail. I mean, I've had people email me some really, really mean things. Like, how can you say you're a Christian and you do astrology? I mean, it hurts my feelings, and then I have people that are like searching, like really, really lost, like really believe that astrology validates their personality, but they just can't, they don't study it because there's a block, because they're afraid that it's wrong, right? Or they're going to get, it's a bad thing. And so they're kind of on that brink of, wanting to learn more and feeling guilt and shame. And I always tell people, I want people to heal and people to be open-minded. It doesn't mean you have to believe everything. And I talk to people that have very different beliefs than me and different theories, and I don't judge, because that's, we're supposed to, the golden rule, treat people as you want to be treated. It's pretty basic when Jesus came, what we need to do, pretty much the 2 things. And so, the Old Testament went away, when he came. And but a lot of times they use that old biblical references to think, to say astrology's wrong. And I know people are a little bit afraid of me at times, because they don't understand, what I do. And I'm like, until they talk to me and, they were, oh, this is really like practical. And that's my goal, like to teach astrology on a basic level where anyone can understand it. Like, that's my mission of writing my books and everything I do, because there's a lot of technical, I mean, astrology's technical. You could spend your lifetime learning astrology. I know I don't know everything. And there's so much, medical astrology, astrocartography. I mean, I'm not an expert at everything, but I just know the basics. And I want people to know the basics and understand it, and validate their experiences, that they have, and that they're not crazy, and they're, fallen angels. They're here in this world. It's like, I studied the Kabbalah a little bit, the tree of life, and, we're in Malkuth is where the earth realm is. And there's different realms, and, we're here, but we're not from here, so to speak. And some people just know that and they experience that based on, their karma or what they're meant to do here. And I've always, I don't feel alone. I used to feel alone, like lonely, and like I'm different, and why am I different? And I felt like an outcast, sort of like no one was like me. So, I mean, I fit in, I played sports. I became a social worker, a counselor, and I kind of kept this as my side hobby, my passion. Now I kind of brought it together because I think I'm meant to, I was meant to write these books now. The timing was all the right time. Before that, I was kind of behind the scenes and hiding, really, and always was me. And now I'm kind of talking about my experiences more. And I don't really care if people think I'm crazy, because I know I'm not. And I know that it's more honest and true when you have these experiences. That's real spiritual experiences to me. That's not, just reading, and it builds faith. My faith is strong. There's no doubt in my mind that there's a God. and I'm here for a purpose, and everyone's here for a purpose. And so these experiences I've had, and maybe some of the struggles throughout my life to get me to where I am today, is made me more resilient, and made me not care so much what people think about me, if they like me or not. And I just in myself, and try to be honest about what I believe. And so that's what I do. In the normal world, people know, they joke me that I'm different. And so I remember in high school, as a senior gag gift, they got me like a package of the Alien, the movie The Alien. It was like a miniature alien, and they teased me, they made fun of me. And so, because they knew, I said, I saw this glowing ball light in my doorway. And my mother said, I saw it too. She told them it was true. And, they just thought, oh, Carmen's being weird. She's the weird one, and, but now I think we are the sane ones. We're the ones that are seeing the real reality of that we're spiritual beings. We're not just a body. I don't know. What do you think, great. Dave? What do you think?
Great. Yeah, great, Carmen. I mean, actually, all three of us have a huge amount in common. We could pick any of these topics by themselves and do an entire show on it. I hope we do in the future, actually.
Yeah.
I'm going to have you on my show for sure, Carmen, if you'd like to join me, and we can go into depth about probably as many of these as possible. I mean, I absolutely love it. And like you said, it's so rare to find someone that is willing to go into specifically both of these avenues, in terms of Christianity versus astrology. But the thing, in my take on this, and I've been trying to get this in front of people for a very long time, in addition, is that my opinion is that astrology has not been taught correctly. That's number one, especially en masse, because most of what you see is in horoscopes. It's coming from Miss Cleo style Hollywood, call the hotline, stuff like this. Yes. No, that's not it, first of all. So, of course, I teach it as a science. I make it very clear it's all mathematics and angles. Yeah. And all I'm doing is using some intuition, and I'm interpreting what I'm seeing. But it's actually, and I tell people this too, it's like, and I don't think most people do, but if someone has a problem with me, fine, take me out of the equation. It's still going to stand. Yes. If you look at what you would agree with, Carmen, if you look at the data, data stands by itself. It's not the person doing it. And I think it's important to be able to separate those at times. But then, of course, now here's the other thing. I will address this part too, because it is about how it's being used. And I'm talking about astrology. I've known people that keep notebooks of all the charts they've done. And it's a little weird because I carry it around sometimes, like almost as if it's like a little diary or something like that. Well, first of all, the minute I do a birth chart, or after I do a birth chart, I go on with my day. I'm not carrying this stuff around me.
Yes.
Some people, and historically, some people have used it for dark arts. I will acknowledge that. But that's that individual person. Now, when it was originally established, I would say, it was established by God. They can work together. That's also my message. If you don't like that term, fine, replace it with whatever term you like. But whoever created the solar system and the universe obviously put that in place. So it's there for us to look at and use and understand and all of these things. And if someone has a problem with it, I encourage they take it up actually with God, because it's not random that it's down here. And it's very easy to do this, because the way I started out, Carmen, is that I just did my own birth chart. And then, which is, if people don't know, it's the conditions in the sky at the moment you were born. It's where the planets are, the stars are, the angles, the location you're born at, all of this stuff. And it gives you specific qualities that make you kind of who you are, essentially, and gives your personality and your fulfillment factors and your drive through life and all this stuff. So all I did was I found a video. Well, Santos Bonacci, if you're familiar with him, Karen's familiar with Santos. That's one of the things we first talked about when me and Karen met. But Santos, I was looking for information about actually some of the esoteric concepts in biology, because my original training is in biology, actually.
Nice. Yeah.
And when I had enough of that, I had my fill of how it's taught in the Western world, and I went to college and I did lots of courses with that, advanced courses in high school, all this stuff, tons of field time and data and laboratories and all these things. And then I finally said, I feel like I'm kind of like reaching a cap right now, and I need to go check in with Asia. I want to see what's happening over there and how they talked about it, because they never talked about it, Carmen. It's like, oh yeah, people do this Chinese medicine, there's Ayurvedic medicine. Okay, well, how about we spend like a couple units on that, or like a couple weeks on that, you know?
Exactly.
It was not well balanced, was not balanced. So
wasn't balanced.
No, and so the thing for me is that I was looking up information about Eastern medicine, you know, and I wanted to know, how do they talk about the body? How do they define that? And along the way, I realized that spirituality is a core component of the Eastern teachings.
Yes.
And the Eastern teachings of biology as well. They actually are woven into each other. So then I was a little freaked out, to be honest, in the beginning, because the first book I picked up that had to do with trying to branch the biology with the Eastern teachings was about the chakra system.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, it's the core of Eastern medicine, essentially. So it's your super highway of energy through your body along the spine there. So I picked up a book about that. I sat in the library. I had no idea what I was doing. I just started to like thumb through the pages. Not comfortable with it at all. Didn't really know what to expect. Didn't know if I wanted to even spend time with it. Sure. And then I let it sit for a while. I read this, or actually it was an article online. I think it's still online. It was called The 7 Shamanic States of Consciousness.
Oh, yeah.
And I ended up writing a pamphlet about that fairly early on in my spiritual journey, in terms of how I started to make the connection between the different chakras and different states of consciousness. Yeah. And then later on down the line, I also started to understand that each of the chakras has a planet associated with it. And people sometimes organize them differently. I have a way I like to do it, and it's for me, it's tried and true. So I don't really move to any other side, because the way I do it works perfect. It's always I can count on it working correctly. So being able to tie, and that's what it was for me, being able to tie all these things in. Now, I grew up Catholic. I think I told you that. Okay. And after I was confirmed, which is basically like 10th grade, you know, I was probably, I don't know, like 15 or something, 16, I guess, probably 16. The Catholic Church at that point believes that you have enough maturity to decide for yourself if you want to dedicate your life to Jesus. And then there's also sacraments and lots of other things involved with the Catholic Church in addition to that. And so, like, basically in my hometown, I grew up in Connecticut. It was kind of what you did if you grew up in a Catholic family. You just kind of went, you know, unfortunately, for a lot of people, it's just going through the motions.
Yeah.
And in fact, I fully believe they don't really know what most people even doing when they're saying, oh yeah, and I want to be part of the church and stuff like this.
Yeah, they don't know the symbolism behind the rituals. Yeah,
exactly. Oh, and that's something we should actually get into next, because I love talking about that.
Yeah.
But just to wrap up my point, having spent time in a lot of the different traditions, and after a certain point in the Catholic Church, I said, you know, this is not working for me. There's a lot of guilt. From my perspective, there was a lot of guilt trip going on. Yeah. It did feel a little cultish to me. I'm not being offensive to anyone. I know some of my friends are Catholic. I love them. Great people, very spiritual people. They pray and they wish the best for everyone. But, you know, in terms of any time a human touches, especially a spiritual tradition, immediately the red flags go up for me, because, you know, it's a control it has the potential to be a very serious control mechanism, and we have to be aware of that.
That's how we got the Protestant religion, because Martin Luther said, wait a minute, we shouldn't have to pay for our sins to be forgiven, right?
Oh, yeah.
So then we had all of the Protestant religions, when they broke from the Catholic Church, you know, some rebels, right, that are like, wait a minute, this does not feel right to me. And then we had, you know, Lutheranism, you know, Martin Luther, and then that branched out into all of the different sects of Protestants, you know. But it's interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so interesting. Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time in different churches, of course, and I don't do so much anymore. I've been to most of them, to be quite honest with you. I did that over probably a 2-year period. And I just, you know, it's one of the things, actually, one of the first things that Santos Bonacci said when I first found his videos, he goes, let me ask you a question, guys. When you go into this church, what are they going to tell you about the 2 other churches across the street? Are they going to tell you that you can't go there and find Jesus? Is it only our church that you can find Jesus here? And that was just brilliant to me, because that's true. And by the way, as far as I know, and according to what I believe, I don't believe that Jesus ever said, go form 1,000 denominations. No, it's not. He never wanted that. He also, in my opinion, again, never wanted to be quote unquote worshiped.
No.
He came to teach us, and he also said, you can do things greater than I did.
Exactly.
And like Carmen said, he also said there will be signs in the sky, and signs and seasons and timing and stuff like that, which is making allusions to, of course, among other things, astrology and larger systems.
Yeah, it's yeah, the church, I didn't really like going to church because, and I wrote that in one of my articles about that. I remember being on the front pew with all my friends, and we were like elementary, middle school, and in Baptist church, they want you to get baptized as soon as possible. It's a little different. It's like, why aren't you getting baptized? Don't you feel the presence of God? So I remember my friend said, I'm going to go up, and are you going to go? And I said, well, I'm not going up until I feel something, because to me, I wanted to feel something, which the day I got baptized, I did feel something. I did. But when I was little, I remember, well, my mom wants me to, right? So they all went up and got baptized. And I felt in my heart that wasn't right for me, because I got to feel something to make me want to go up there. Right. And I wrote about that in some of my articles, but, and it's interesting because, Jesus would say, what did he say? Go alone in your closet and pray to me, go alone. There's a verse. And to me, that's like, you don't have to go to church to connect with Jesus or God. We can do that in our own home, in our own spiritual. I have my little spiritual room. I call it, everywhere I live, I have a little space that's just for me to do my stuff and meditate. And it's not about being showy, to go, just to show you're going to church. Now, some people get a sense of community through going to church, and the best church I ever went to, and it was my Mars in the ninth house. I mean, I guess I like this, but I had friends from Korea, and they had a Korean Christian church, and this was in Virginia, and I took my daughter there, and we went every weekend, and the minister would preach in Korean, and the Americans, there's only 2 American families, and I was one of them. We'd wear headphones to hear it translated into English. And I loved to hear the preacher, who was also female, speak Korean. And then we'd have the Korean food after, the amazing food, after we go to church. So that was the only time I really liked going to church. And I loved it. And my daughter loved it. And she was like in first grade, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, kind of young, and everything was going well. And I really found like, I found a place that I actually will go on Sunday. And then something happened and we quit going. And what it was so silly, really. But she was in the Sunday school class, and she had a shirt on from like, the kids' gymboree or whatever. And it was a peace sign. And the instructor and with the kids told them the peace sign was evil, and went into detail why it was evil. So on the way home from church, my daughter says, Mama, why was the peace sign evil? Should I not be wearing the peace sign shirt? And I'm like, and then after that, I'm like, so we looked into it, and my friends were upset, that went there, and they kind of looked into it. And he believed this was his own belief. It was not part of the church. But we quit going after that, so I didn't want anything to put fear in her, that just because you have a peace sign on your shirt that's rainbow, I mean, that's bad, and so that's, I don't like it when that stuff happens. I don't like that.
Well,
don't skip over this brief commercial break. Dave and I have some important information for you. You may have noticed that participation in our community does not depend on memberships or donations, and we do not hide our episodes behind a paywall. We want everyone to have the opportunity to learn and share our important content with others. Dave and I both offer services which may make your journey more fulfilling, and I offer some products as well. Our sales and services are what provide us with the means to continue our work, as there are many expenses associated with our mission. Check out our offerings to find that which resonates with you to help create a win-win situation. What I mean by that is financial support to help cover our expenses, but also some great products and services to give you that edge that you've been looking for. Check out my online shop, www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com, to find Zendome's orgone generators, comfort crystals, and an array of vital services, all designed to help you to become the change that you wish to see in the world. Now, more than ever, people are awakening to a world we never imagined possible. In response, Dave and I are offering tools, methods, and podcast content to assist you with your awakening process. You are not alone, and there is still much we can do to support our health, emotions, and our spirituality. We both combine ancient wisdoms with cutting-edge technology to help bring comfort to your body, happiness to your mind, and joy to your spirit. To assist you with your life journey, check out my website and find many valuable resources. There's the 9 Steps to Quantum Health Transformation. This is a free, comprehensive online course. Learn about detoxification and nutrition, grounding and spiritual practices, and an advanced version of the Law of Attraction, giving you more of what you really want out of life. I also have my Zendome's Orgonite, which is my unique brand of orgone generators. They're ethically sourced and handmade by a friend of mine, and they're double charged for maximum effect. I also carry comfort crystals, which is a limited collection of energetically infused semi-precious stones. I have an array of vital services so you can get the one-on-one support that you've been looking for. Also coaching, guidance, and I do assessments and also workshops. And then again, there are the many free resources available on my website. Wisdom to assist with energetic ascension into physical, mental, and spiritual paradise. Also, check out Dave's services. Dave can teach you about astrology and spiritual concepts, principles of Eastern medicine, birth charts, relationship matching, spiritual guidance, fasting, and his unique approach to health. You can find Dave's services on his Facebook page, Instagram at Dave Petrella 12, and his YouTube channel. The links can be found in the description box below. Let us share our quantum work with you. It's your turn to heal, evolve, and thrive. Believe in your ability to succeed. Now, let's get back to the show.
Exactly. And it's just projection stuff that happens where people putting their own insecurities and things that, even potentially demonic influences that they have on their body and in their energy field, putting that on other people. No, never. No, you should never be doing that.
It broke my heart that happened to her, because I really liked it, and I felt good there. I felt good, and it's hard to find a place, and I really, we never really went back to an organized place, after that. And but that's okay. She's 18 now. She's fine. She's open-minded. I raised her to be open-minded and to question things. So, but she's on her own path, but it's good. But those experiences change you. Like I remember with the dreams. Dreams are mentioned like 100 and something, 140 times. I forgot what it is in the Bible. All the dreams of the future were all throughout the Bible, and yet we're not encouraged to believe in our dreams when we're young. That dreams are messages from God or from a higher power, and I believe that. And I, why couldn't we talk about that growing up instead of like, ooh, there's something wrong, you shouldn't be dreaming things, right? And no, that's my biggest thing is I know if I dream something, because I know how vivid it is. It's like I'm lucid, I'm awake. And when I have those dreams, they happen. And it may be 6 months later, it may be 3 months later, but I've seen it in my life. And I'm like, I dreamed that. And so now I always tell somebody as a witness, listen, I dreamed this, just in case it happens, because I'll forget I dreamed, and I'm just saying they're getting a new job or they're leaving, I mean, it'll be something like at work, whatever, and it'll be based on a dream. And I write them down. I have a dream log. I've been doing this since high school, and it happened this past week. And they're like, you told me that in August, these 2 dreams you had. I said, yeah, I knew they were leaving. I knew. I just didn't know when, but I do that. And to me, it's kind of like I get a glimpse of what's coming in my life, like a heads up. And in that, when it first happened, I think even my family were a little bit afraid to talk about it. But I dreamed that my grandmother, she came to me the night before she died in the dream. And she was trying to tell me something I couldn't hear. And then she kind of faded away. And I woke up and I knew something was going to happen to my dad's mother. And so all day I kept telling him to call her. There's something wrong. And I felt it. I knew. I always know when I wake up when it's a psychic dream or a clairvoyant dream, or if it's just symbolic. Sometimes there's symbols hidden. There's symbolic in the mix of the real. I get those too. And some of it is just dreams. Some of it is messages that are, like to get my attention. And so I pay attention. And my dad said, she's fine. He kept calling her that day. And then that night, she went to sleep and she died in her sleep. And I was at peace. I know it's weird to say this. I was really close with her, but I knew she came to me. And I felt at peace. And at the funeral, I was strong. I wasn't shocked. It's like I knew I was prepared emotionally or whatever. And that happened. And I've had other dreams of people. My other grandmother, who I was very close with, came to me in a dream, told me I was her favorite granddaughter and that she loved me and was proud of me. And when I woke up, I knew. And I told my mother, you need to prepare. And about 3 weeks later, she passed away. And the crazy thing about that is she used to dream things too. My grandmother, my mom's mom. So she came in my dream and I knew what it meant. And so it's something that I think a lot of people dream, and I think that people, they just don't realize that, what they say, an unexamined dream is like an open letter. It's like your soul's giving you all this information. And then, then it's all throughout the Bible, all of the dreams and all of the, God prepared and warned people through dreams. Because when we sleep, we're in our souls connected to the higher, I think the subconscious, the super, all the different levels of the mind. And when we're in our normal conscious mind, we doubt, we question ourselves. So I always say, if I dream something, this is what I've always prayed, like, give me a dream, because if I dream something, I will believe it. And I know that I know it's real. Now, when it's just a gut instinct or intuition, I think we tend to doubt ourselves a little bit. And I think that's why, I like astrology so much, because like you said, it's a science. And then we scientifically, we know the meanings, and it's all energy. We know how to explain the energies. And then like, how did you know that? That's exactly what happened, because it's your chart. It's the map of your soul, right? It's the map of your soul. This isn't me just coming up and channeling information. This is science. This is energy. This is your personality. And there's times I might have an intuitive vibe come or see something in my mind and that I want to share when I'm doing a chart with someone.
Yeah.
And that happens as well. But when I look at a chart, I'm confident to know that it's science. It's not Carmen is given, a tarot reading or something, right? It's very, and I feel like with tarot and some of these things, which I've always studied, I have tons of tarot decks, but To me, tarot is like art therapy. When you look at the symbols, which is what we're talking about, images, you get a certain emotion and energy from looking at those symbols. And that's how you analyze a tarot card deck, right? I mean, when you're looking at, it's really the images, the art, and how they make you feel. And so I've always just done them on myself, and I tell you and I'll know what they, because you connect with it. It's just like art therapy when you're, when you,
Yep.
it's
so many different decks.
Yeah. And most decks, I'll be honest, I don't like. There's only like maybe 2 decks in my whole life that I've actually liked in the images, and I've kept them. I've looked at a lot and I'm like, no, I just don't, I don't like, I have to have a certain image. It has to look, I don't know. It's just a certain thing that you can see, but I think that that's the thing with astrology, that we know the energies because it is a science, and it was created by God, I believe it was, and it's in the book of Genesis. I mean, I think that more people are interested in astrology because they think it's just their horoscope, and that's not what it is. That's just based on your sun sign, and they're making stuff, they're just making it fit for everyone. But when you really have your chart done, I had recently a friend of mine had thought she was born at a certain time, and I did her chart and everything, and I said, well, if this doesn't fit, this doesn't validate, then we got something wrong. Are you sure you're born at this time? She goes, well, that's what my mother told me. I said, well, do you have it on your birth certificate? She said, no, there's nothing on my birth certificate, not on the one I have. And I said, I think we have your wrong time. That's what I told her. There's something off, because so recently she just got a new birth certificate in the mail with a new birth time. And I pulled, she was, I'm born a totally different time. My mother was wrong. I said, okay. So I look her up, everything changed, and I just said, oh, okay. She goes, now this fits me. Oh, that's creepy. She said, I started telling her, this is just off the top of my head, this is what you got here. And oh my gosh, that's my life. And I said, have you been married more than once? She's like, oh my gosh, because she never told me that. How did you know that? I go, well, it's your chart. It's right here in your chart. I typically see this now. I'm careful how I say it, right? But and she's like,
what was that? Was that 7th house, Carmen, or what was that? You saw something?
Yeah. She had Mars and Sun in the 7th house, but her south node was Libra and North Node Aries, which I told her typically with those nodes, 98% of the time the person has been divorced or separated or more than one marriage. With that South Node Libra, specifically North Node Aries, because they're trying to find independence, but they get married young in life, because we're in our South Node till we get older, right? And we start embracing our North Node. But she's like, that's my life, and so the time is so important for listeners out there to know, your month, day, and year. Your exact time of birth, AM or PM, is very important, because that'll show us where the planets are in the houses, which are the areas of life that the energy is expressed in, and your place of birth. You gotta know that. Now we can do a basic chart with just without the accurate time. We can do different things, but a time is so important, and some people don't have their time, so it's really hard to really get a full accurate blueprint, so to speak. But no, I've always loved symbols. Yep. And I remember, people would wear the pentagram. I remember seeing people wear the upside down pentagram, and all this stuff. And I started getting into that and realized, the pentagram was a Christian symbol that they put on the houses to ward off evil spirits. And it was a powerful symbol of protection, not evil, right? And so they're just all these things. And then if you look at police officers and sheriffs, they wear a star. So the star, and the Star of David, the star and the symbols of that. So, and then you can see it in the real world, right? And how, law enforcement protectors, they wear the star. So it's just those symbols that people, they don't always know what they even mean, when they're wearing some of these symbols. And you can make symbols, put a connotation with symbols and make them evil, like the swastika, and different symbols, which, there's some wasn't that a Hindu symbol that Hitler used to and it turned it into a bad symbol, right? because what symbol was it in Hinduism? I can't remember, but I remember studying this, and I realized
the native tribes in the Southwest as well, Carmen, of the United States, they use the same symbol. And for me, it's really basic. I mean, it's a cardinal directions. And then I believe I saw something that it was referencing like basically four big dippers that were put at different angles to each other, creating that symbol. And then the other one, of course, is that I think it also might include the ordinal directions, which is in between the two cards. That's essentially the fixed points there in the zodiac. So it's actually just the symbol for me. It's just the symbol of the sky, and of astrology. I mean, it's not a big deal. I mean, you're right. Is that when you define the symbol, that's when it takes on a certain connotation, And actually, I believe Venus is associated with 5, if I'm not mistaken, one of the main planets because of its orbit.
Yeah.
And so Venus it's obviously the love energy primarily, and it's something that even of course the Knights Templar really heavily were into that as well, and they knew all about the numerology and the symbology and the shapes that are made in the sky and all of this stuff. So we just have to I just encourage people just to slow down. That's like the thing, and just you can believe. There's no commitment necessary. You can believe whatever you want, but I'd like to tell you a story today. I'd like to give me an hour and let me just talk for a little bit. And then I don't care what you do with it. I just want to tell you this because I care about the person. It's interesting. It's exciting to hear this stuff, And then my big thing, Carmen, too, is that I'm really big on applied action because I love all information, but I want to see things happen that are positive things with any kind of information, whether it's astrology or science or whatever. It makes no difference to me.
Exactly. So let me ask you your opinion on this. What's your opinion on, the Sermon on the Mount, with Jesus and all that they saw, and what do you think was about that? Because, I've had some theories about that, how they saw him come walking out of the sky in a light and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, we actually one of the first things we talked about was that it could have been a spaceship. I had never seen that until I saw that on Ancient Aliens, actually, which is I have to say, even though I've had my experiences with Hollywood and they have not really been necessarily amazing. I'm just saying from what it was, I'm just saying how it is. Because there's a lot of fabrication, a lot of put on things are just manipulated, changed for entertainment purposes, stuff like that, not for truth. But I have to say that show, Ancient Aliens, which I think it's in its 16th or 17th season now, or even 18th season. It's been on TV for more than 10 years, I believe. And that was one of my kind of crash courses in ancient alien, well, definitely ancient alien theory, but just even with UFOs and aliens and all that stuff, it really weaves it together extremely well. And if I had to say one place for people to go, just start with that. Start at season 1, and just if you want to just sit back and just let it wash over you, and then you'll after a few months down the road, you'll kind of get a feel for what you think about it. But anyway, this was one of the topics that came up a lot, and I don't know why, but I had never thought about it on those terms. It's what if it was some kind of a spaceship, an extraterrestrial craft? Because and it gets, as you know, Carmen, it gets I don't know if it was the Sermon on the Mount specifically. There's actually quite a few references to this throughout all the entire Bible, but it's often described with there being a lot of noise and smoke and stuff like that, and these other weird things. Sounds mechanical almost, it's not something necessarily organic. But it has been suggested in fringe groups for quite a long time that Jesus was actually potentially an extraterrestrial being. Well, I mean, by definition, it means extra Earth, or in addition to what's on Earth, or not from Earth, essentially. So the thing about that is that you could define him that way, but in terms of more than that, being that, and I'm not trying to be controversial, everything I say could be taken that way, but what I'm referring to is that some people think that the resurrection was actually that he was taken up by a craft, and that he wasn't actually encompassing that. I actually believe in kind of like a split timeline, a split dimension explanation, And that's how I teach a cosmic axis, which essentially is it's actually a better way to teach Kabbalah, in my opinion. And it's just teaching the spheres and the dimensions and the planets and all that stuff and how it's actually set up, which is also my model for astrology that I use. But the thing about that model, well, one of the big things too is that, of course, the story of Enoch, massive story. It's a hugely important story. He described the spheres. He was describing that, and he was using the term the vaults and the spheres. He was talking about the crystalline sea. He described, which is traditionally in the ninth sphere, which is ruled by Neptune. At 9 out of 10, there's essentially 9 or 10 spheres. You can look at it either way, really. But the thing is that the way he described it, he's like, well, it wasn't quite water, but it wasn't quite air, but it was like shimmering and sparkling. And I'm saying, yeah, because that's a crystalline sea. And he was talking about the dimensions and how they're organized, along the cosmic axis and all this stuff, and the dome above the earth and all of these things. So it's all in there. But anyway, I think that it's probably one of the more controversial things I would say, but this is what I believe. And I've seen many representations for Jesus. I believe in the Christ figure, which for me is also Krishna, because Krishna and Christ is the same word. It's also in the exact order, QRSTU, Christu, in the English alphabet. It actually spells out Christ in order with the letters right there.
Wow.
And so the Christ consciousness, or the cosmic consciousness, is just all it is to me is the highest consciousness of love and kindness and generosity and awareness and all these things. Now, if you want to name it, if people want to name it, that's fine with me. But I think the character of Jesus, first of all, the character of Jesus, he's not the first iteration of the shepherd even. We had Osiris before that. So you've got people who in really all the solar deities that are filling a similar role that he did. He was one of the more recent ones, actually, having to really put it out there. It goes thousands of years before that. So the thing about it for me is just that we've had the story of resurrection, and it's essentially an ascension story, and I'm really big on ascension teachings. If I had to say what I do, I would actually say ascension teachings before I would even say astrology or even biology, the broader categories of ascension. So there have been these traditions that have woven through time, and we can see that Osiris was also a shepherd. He also talked in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, talks about leaving the underworld. I think the underworld, well, it can be conceived at least two ways. One, I think, is actually talking about the earth. This is the underworld. There's an underworld beneath the earth as well, but the earth itself is also an underworld. It's not a very high level dimension. I think it's purgatory, according to the Catholic phrasing.
I did too. I agree. Yeah, I agree. That's interesting.
Oh, totally. So you've got all these things that are weaving together. But anyway, the thing about Jesus is that the one that I believe in, the version that I believe in, who is Christ, is the correct one. That one is, he's my friend. He's my family. He's everything in the universe, And so if I always I'm always careful about how I talk about this, because I try to ask people to define him for me. Or when someone says, yeah, I believe in God, well, what are his, it's not even his. That's another issue sometimes that I have with this. It's everything, which means his and hers. It encompasses everything. So I ask people to find the characteristics and tell me about the actions that are taken. And I ask them to explain to me what on earth was happening in the Old Testament. I think we should touch on that before the end of the show too, because there's some really scary, strange things going on there. And I had a problem with that. I still do. I teach that the God of the Old Testament is a different God than the New Testament God. And I teach the Old Testament God is actually Saturn. And the New Testament God is the Son, or Jesus, whichever way you want to look at that. Because as far as I'm concerned, you don't ask for blood sacrifices at all. If you're a divine being, Carmen, it's like one of probably the most offensive thing I can possibly think of to say. You should not ask anyone, you should not tempt anyone, you should not test anyone with the sacrifice. What is going on with Abraham and his son Isaac? Why would you do that?
I know, I hate that. I know
that's not a benevolent God. You don't, and I don't care if it's a human or an animal. You don't do that with an animal either.
So
we gotta question what's going on with that. But Yeah, I think it could have been a craft. But actually, how about the Star of Bethlehem? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I definitely think, that was a sign to them that something very important was happening. So, well, if we think about, let's even go back. So Mary, just divine pregnancy, just got pregnant, had never had sexual intercourse. Um, she had the angel visit her. So the angel visitation. Um,
that's controversial there too.
Uh-huh.
Because some people think, and then, by the way, there's stories from much before Christianity came on the scene of gods coming down and actually having sexual relations with women, and then creating, of course, giants, the
Nephilim, and all of the fallen. Well, yeah, I think when people think of fallen angels, they think of that. These angels fell to earth and mingled with humans, and then is that where the whole Rh negative bloodline thing also?
Right.
I'm Rh negative, I'm O negative, and I've always been different. My mother's O negative. She has an extra vertebrae in her back, she found out, and I have sent her the little list of different things. So I've always been interested in all those different theories and things. But it is the divine, the immaculate conception, and then you got all of these things. And it's interesting, and then there's even more controversy. Was Jesus married in that time and culture, with the whole Mary Magdalene, all those theories. I've read a lot of those books about those ancient theories about did he have a child. She washed his feet. In that culture, that only a wife could do that, with Jesus. There's just all these different books and theories out there, and I'm always been open-minded to those things. Like, they say they had evidence that he was in the Great Pyramid and traveled all over before he started preaching, even before he even became who he was there. So it's interesting. Mary Magdalene was at the cross when he died. She was at the tomb, and when she's the one that saw him. And was she a disciple? Was she? There's all the different theories. What is that movie? Based on the book with Tom Hanks. It's all about
Da Vinci Code, probably. Right?
Da Vinci Code and all the different theories. And then I read a book about it. She was like a historian. I can't think of the name of it, but researched Mary Magdalene through art and through, Europe and things. And people, that's controversial. If you talk about these things with devout Christians, they'd say, no, Mary Magdalene is not a disciple, right? How do we know? How do we know?
Well, what I say is, okay. Because I'm not invested what other people believing.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to turn my head to information ever. And I don't care what it is. And I don't care if I'm uncomfortable, Carmen.
Yeah.
I'm a scientist. I'm I'm interested in data and information. Yeah. So, and I already believe in the true Christ figure, but I think when I talk about the different Earth timelines and things, it's very important. I don't think people think about this enough in terms of actual application to even history and all these things. And a lot of the reason why we get these alternative stories about, oh, he was real, Jesus was real, Jesus was not real, there was no data. Well, which one is it? Herod was real. Oh, Herod was not real. We don't have any data, historical data on him. Okay. Well, so what I say is, actually, what if both of them are real and they're happening in different alternate timelines? And so what I suggest, I teach a 21 dimension Earth system along the cosmic axis that goes straight through the center of the Earth. 10 heavens above, 10 hells below. Mm-hmm. So what I say is that, and Karen is at least somewhat aware of this because we've done presentations on dimensions before that I presented this topic. And the thing that I think about a lot is that you have different timelines based on the different dimension that is coexisting on top of the other 20 dimensions in like a nesting fashion. So the Earth has 21 different things happening in the same space at the same time. Which one you see depends on your own frequency.
Yeah.
which one you get to experience. And I've seen several of them, by the way. One of the things that I can see is, you talk about being able to see and have visions and stuff like that. I've
Yeah.
seen some of the alternate versions, and I realized a few years ago that I think one of the issues with when this whole fake news thing really broke out is that some people can actually, I think, move between different dimensional or different timelines. They don't realize they are, and I think
Yeah.
that's the issue. So they spent say they spent a week in one dimension, Carmen. They come back and they're bringing news stories back with them and all this stuff. People are like, "What are you talking about? That's not how it is here." And they're like, "Yeah, it is. I just saw that." And then I finally, at some point, realized, I'm like, you know what? I bet you they did. And it's just that how quantum physics works is that you can't all perceive that, but you
Yeah.
assume that the issue is you assume you're in the same space when you come back to versus the one you spent an alternate
Yeah.
time or in a weekend or whatever, and then we have this misinformation happening.
Yeah.
So some people believe, I just want to mention two more things quickly. Some people believe that Jesus was part of a reptilian race. Again, I'm not being offensive at all. There are depictions of that, actually, a lot of them in the Vatican. And again, I'm not trying to be offensive, but it's, there's one of these things that if people have never seen this, please just look at it. I'm not asking you to even form an opinion, but in the I believe it's called like the Convention Center in the Vatican, there's a depiction of Jesus on the stage. I don't know if you've seen this one, Carmen.
I've been to the Vatican. I may have seen it. Yeah.
Okay, so he's on the stage. It's a very elaborate, ornate, like huge piece. I think it's made
Yeah.
out of metal, like some thin metal or something like that.
Yeah.
And behind him are a bunch of like swirling lines and stuff. I think people are saying they're angels or whatever stuff like this. But if you look at, here's the thing: is that if you're this is an auditorium. So if you're
Yeah.
standing at the center of the auditorium, and by the way, if you look to the top of, and again, I'm not breaking this. I saw this on YouTube, and I can't believe I hadn't seen it before. But if you look up at the top of that, the top two corners of the ceiling, there's actually two stained glass windows. I believe they're green in color, and they look like eyes. They actually look like eyes. The
Oh,
shape of
really?
the shape of the auditorium is essentially a serpent's head. That's number one.
Wow.
So now we're going back to the Garden of Eden and saying,
Yes.
okay, so who was this serpent? What are we talking about with that? That's all other talk. We can do that on my show, Carmen, you and me, if you want.
Wow. Yeah, that's a whole nother time's flying by, isn't it? Yeah, we can talk all
Oh
day.
yeah. Okay, but this last thing I want to say about this is that
Yeah.
when you look at the stage from the side, if you're like 45 degrees from the side versus being straight on looking at the stage, you
Yeah.
can see that Jesus actually does. He has a. Again, I'm not being offensive, guys. I believe in the real Christ. I absolutely do. But you
Yes.
should question who people. You can say this is the Christ, and you can have it be something else, or you can worship something and say, yeah, that's Jesus. And I'm like, wait a minute, are you sure about that? I don't know if I feel like it fits with the energy and stuff that you're
Yeah.
putting out with this. When you look at it from the side, he very clearly has a reptilian head, and I believe his hands are also not. I'm not say webbed, but they're not. The fingers are not clear, so it looks like it's not quite a human hand. And I'm just saying, guys, and I actually ask, please, if the Catholic Church wants to respond to that, please tell me why I'm seeing that when I look at that,
And
and
it's
why it's
in the
not just
Vatican. Yeah. It's in the
yeah,
Vatican.
and it's not just me. It's
Yeah.
it's like, please tell me and the other million or more people why we feel weird when we look at this. And please,
Yeah.
the responsibility is on you to explain why it looks like a serpent head when you look at it from the side. I mean,
Wow.
come on.
What is this? It's these symbols, these hidden symbols that are within things that, but you're looking into it, you're questioning it, you noticed it. A lot of people may just not even see it. Now they're going to see it if they go look, right? They're going to notice it.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, and there's another one too, Carmen, which is the idea of Jesus being a hologram. Which we get some of that technology's out there now in terms of what people can do with drones and what is it, Project Blue Beam or something like this, that you can. Some people think they're going to stage an alien invasion or stage a return of a savior or some ridiculous nonsense like this. So it's all foolish to me. But you know
yeah.
what? I have to say one thing though, is that when I was a kid, and I didn't realize this till much later, but when I was reading through the Bible, And I've read, I'm sure you've read the Bible as well, probably multiple times. I've read it 3 times myself, front to back, starting the Old Testament all the way to the back. And yes, through Kings and all this stuff, and I've read all through all the lineages. I didn't skip anything at all the footnotes, to make sure I was understanding this. But the thing that's really interesting about this to me is that you have some kind of you have some trains of thought that go through these teachings, and the what's the word I'm looking for? The syntax. I think that's the right word.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what that meant when I was a kid either. But when I was looking at specifically when Jesus was talking, I'm like, I was feeling a little weird about it, because I believed in my heart, I believed in the true Christ my entire life. But when I was reading his words, the thought that I had, I don't know if I was able to actually make it verbal at the time, but it felt really mechanical to me. It felt almost robotic to me. And I'm like, why is this so like choppy like this? And why is it always these really obscure riddles that don't really make I'm not getting anything from that. It's actually confusing me, first of all, as a kid. And I also felt slightly uncomfortable, and I didn't understand why Jesus was making me uncomfortable. Because I'll just as a reference point, if there was a divine savior figure that came down here, you're gonna talk clearly in simple terms. You don't want to, if you're a truly divine figure, an ascended master, you make sure there's no confusion. You should make sure no one's questioning your energy field or any of this stuff. You make it very clear. And one of the things that I think happened, and I actually had a friend tell me this about the Quran. I have a Hindu friend who lives in India. She asked her coworker who was Muslim. She said, why is the Quran so like vindictive? What is going on in that book? Why does it always take revenge on people? It literally says that over and over and over and over. And this person told her, my Hindu friend told my Hindu friend, this Muslim person, said, that's not our actual book. They said it was essentially hijacked. So I think a similar things happen with actually all of the religious texts. And a group came in and said, no, that we're gonna rewrite this our way. And I think they've essentially all been taken over, because I always wondered why Jesus didn't talk. It always felt like he didn't talk enough about the true ascension teachings, and he was far too cryptic. And I just didn't like how things were weirdly repetitive, and it felt strange. And I'm like, that's not the Christ that I know. No way.
It's interesting. Yeah, because they say the Vatican has the largest astrological library in the world. And what
sure.
and just imagine all of the books, the hidden secret books that they have from that we don't even know about. Like the Gnostic Gospels, I've heard about that a little bit, and it's interesting. It's very interesting. Yeah, I love talking about this stuff.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Me too, but guys, we're almost out of time. So I'm just wondering if you want to just give your final thoughts, and then Carmen, I've got to have you back. Dave wants to have you on his show. I want to have you on my other show, so maybe we can talk about that after the show.
Sure.
So please, I don't want to cut you off. Please share, any closing thoughts you have. And the time goes by really fast when you're engaged in interesting conversation.
Yeah. I would just say, for listeners out there, just, to just do your own research and start studying some of these things, if you have an interest, and I just, be a little bit open-minded that, there's a lot more than we really know. And I'm always learning something new, and I'm always trying to, make sense of things and my experiences. So, you're not alone out there if you have these interests and you've had these thoughts, you're like a scientist, a spiritual scientist, researching these things, which there's nothing wrong with researching these things and studying them and reading about them and trying to make it make sense for you. That's kind of my parting thoughts, I guess.
Excellent. Yeah, I really appreciate it, Carmen. Thanks so much for joining us. I do want to talk about the ball of light sometime in the future too, because it's a very important topic. I just want to ask you really, really fast though, I know it was a little bit frightening in the beginning. Do you feel like it was all the same consciousness, or was it like different types of orbs and stuff?
I think that was the same consciousness. All the orbs I saw were the same, energy, same. not different.
Positive, would you say?
Yeah. Now, now that I look back, I hit myself. I wish I would have got up when it released me to walk over to it. But I was 15 or 16 years old. So, now I'm like, if it happened now, I would get up, but I haven't seen it since. Those 3 times. Haven't seen any orbs since then. Now I see flashes, sometimes I'll see like a flash out of my peripheral, like a light, and I'll look, out of the corner of my eyes when I'm focusing on something or whatever. And I know this sounds really weird, but this is something that I always felt like that the reason I was open to these different things and these experiences, I think, is I spent my whole life at the basketball court shooting. And that repetitive focus on the goal, the ball going through the rim over and over and over, and like the focusing my mind. I think that opened me up. I know it sounds strange, but I did think about this when I started studying all these things, is that there's something about concentration and focus in my mind that I think is what opened me up. And I will say that I am a little creeped out by it, but when I saw that orb after that is when I became more intuitive and more psychic. I had more dreams. And then I must say my spiritual abilities heightened. I will say that for sure. Now I was always born. Even when I was little. I don't remember this, but my cousins who babysat me told me that I would kind of scare them. Because I'd say, I had imaginary friends. I'd say, I was like, I saw ghosts. I don't really remember being little at all. Like, I don't remember being a kid, and I think 5th grade and on, 4th grade, maybe I remember a little bit from elementary, but I don't remember being little. But I've been told I was always different, even when I was little. And I, so I think I kind of blocked it out maybe as I got older, but then I always had something. And I think that based on the research I've read about orbs and things through the ARE, when I went to their workshop, that people that have seen orbs, they start having these synchronicity experiences. They dream things, they have intuitions, they know things. So their ability, so something about that, I was meant to see it. And I know it sounds crazy, but I feel like it helped me make those baskets in that game. It was there protecting me, watching out for me. And the day I got baptized, I saw 3 go across the back of the church. And that's a whole nother show. Remind me to tell you about the picture that my aunt took of my dad and I getting baptized. Right, he went in the water before me, and then I went in. And when I had the picture, there was something in the water in my picture that I immediately saw. And then when I looked at my dad, it wasn't in the water with his. And it was I don't know the way the light, but there's hands in the water. You can see the ruffles and the fingers coming up on the side of the glass, and I noticed it like maybe a year after. When I was looking through my parents' stuff, we had moved, and I was back from college, and I found the picture, and I immediately saw it, and I took it to my grandmother, who was like me, my mom's mom, and she got a magnifying glass, and I just gasped. Like, it was like she couldn't believe it. You could see the hands in the water. That's a whole nother show, but I don't share that a lot.
Definitely.
It's the first I've ever shared that in many years. But I was obsessed with that after that happened. So
wow. that is really interesting. See, I don't see that excuse me, I don't see that as being creepy. I just see that as more confirmation, that we're in good hands. And like you said earlier, that the spiritual realm and the 3-dimensional realm are much more integrated than what we think. And with all of that, I want to thank you so much, Carmen, for coming on the show, and my co-host,
Dave Petrella.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
Oh, very welcome. And we'll see you next time on Aliens and Astrology. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you can get more of our amazing content. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining Dave and I for the Aliens and Astrology Show. Become the change you want to see in the world. Subscribe to our YouTube channels, click the like button, and share this show with your friends. Check out Karen's website at KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. All the links will be in the description box below. Until the next time, keep up the good work.
Well, you challenge my perception. I shift uneasily as I try to justify how I value your suggestions. Ideas full of life when I'm empty of my own. And 5 minutes before I was okay, now the curtain drops to the floor. Leaves me weak and begging for more. When I think I get it, it flutters and vanishes away.